Hello and welcome to What Makes America Tick. I'm your host, Congressman Troy Carter. I proudly represent the best place in the country, Louisiana's 2nd Congressional District. Join me as we dive into an engaging conversation to answer the question, what makes America tick? Today we're interrupting our usual programming to bring you a special episode because the stakes are simply too high to ignore. In April, the Supreme Court ruled on Louisiana v. Calais. It was a devastating blow to the promise of equal representation in our democracy. This ruling is about far more than lines on a map. It's about whether Black Louisianians will have a meaningful opportunity to make their voices heard. The right to vote is the cornerstone of our democracy, and I will continue fighting against any effort to weaken that right. I remain committed to advocating for fairness, equity, and representation that truly reflects the voices of our communities. I know this is a difficult and uncertain time for many people, but I want you to know this: we're fighting back. We're not giving up. We're not going back. Recently, I held a town hall focused on voting rights and redistricting alongside Mayor Helena Moreno, the Orleans legislative delegation, and members of the New Orleans City Council, who came together to inform, organize, and stand united in defense of the fundamental right to vote. What you're about to hear is that conversation. Thank you all for joining us for this very important town hall meeting to discuss the most recent set of affairs with the Supreme Court ruling, what it means to us. I've assembled a group of individual experts and elected officials who will join me in discussing what all this means. Where are we? What happened? And equally, if not more important, what we do next. Before we begin, I'm going to ask Father Jean-Jacques from True Vine Baptist Church to come up and offer an opening prayer.
Let us bow our heads in prayer. This is our prayer, O God, eternal God, the only God that we know, the only God in whom we put our trust. It is in times like these that we know how to pray, the prayer that you give us to pray. We do it every day. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed will be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine art the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. O God, we pray for your blessing. O God, we pray that you would give us the right words to say. O God, we pray that you give us the right action to take, not to separate us, but to unite us, not to hurt us, but to heal us of any injustice that is caused us to be divided. O God, we ask that you will give us one love. O God, for one nation and for one people united together for this United States of America. Let the words of my mouth, the meditation of thy heart, be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. It is in Jesus' name we pray. The saints of God and the people of God will respond by saying amen, 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 amen. Amen. God bless you.
Amen. Thank you, Father Jean-Jacques. Today we will endeavor to go over and spell out where we are, what got us here. I want to first recognize our elected officials who are here with us. J.P. Morrell, of course, our Honorable Mayor, Helena Moreno, Richard Perk, Edward Shorty, Freddie King, Renee Pratt, Sidney Bartholomew, Eugene Green, Leslie Harris, Katie Baudouin, Amy McCarron, Matt Willard, and our district attorney, Jason Williams. Good evening, family. I want to begin by thanking Dr. Monique Guillory, the president of this great university. Dr. Guillory, where are you? Here we are. Dr. Guillory is always quick to step up, to stand out, and to be present and to allow us to use their facilities for meetings like this. It's a pillar in our community. Dillard University, a great institution of higher learning that morphs itself on any given day to a community hall where individuals can come to be heard, to talk about pressing issues. Again, a huge thank you to Dillard University for welcoming us in this space. I also want to thank every voter, organizer, faith leader, student, community advocate who continues to stand up for democracy, a democracy that is being challenged all over our country, not just in Louisiana. I also want to say that the people here tonight to help provide context, who are on the panel to help provide context on the state of Louisiana v. Calais and the voting rights broadly in Louisiana. I want to personally thank those that will be speaking to us tonight. Mayor Helena Moreno, Jason Williams, our district attorney, Ilana Odoms with Louisiana ACLU, J.P. Morrell, New Orleans City Council President, Representative Delisha Boyd, who serves on House and Governmental Affairs, Senator Gary Carter, who serves on Senate Governmental Affairs, and Sidney Bartholomew, who will be representing the Senate. The members of the House and Senate are stuck in some bad traffic. I'm not sure what helicopter Sidney used, but he got here when the others couldn't, and we appreciate you. That's when you're a brand new member. Tonight we gather at a defining moment for our democracy, our state, and our future. What we've witnessed from the Supreme Court is not simply a legal decision or lines on a map. It's part of a larger struggle over who gets represented, whose voices matter, and whether the promise of America's democracy truly belongs to all of us. I underscore all of us. For generations, people have marched, bled, sacrificed, and even died to secure the right to vote and the right for fair representation. Those rights were not handed to us on a silver platter. They were hard-earned. They were earned through courage, protest, prayer, perseverance, and yes, people's lives. Now, once again, we find ourselves confronting efforts to threaten those hard-fought gains. When the Voting Rights Act is weakened, when minority representation is diminished, and when communities are divided in ways that silence their collective voice, we must recognize the danger before us and unite like we've never united before. Louisiana is nearly one-third African American. Our congressional representation should reflect the true demographics, history, and diversity of this great state. Fair representation is not a favor. It's a constitutional principle. It's an American principle. And let me say tonight clearly and unapologetically, we will not be intimidated. We will not run. We will not cower and we will not beg. We will not be discouraged and we will not go backwards. We will organize. We will educate. We will mobilize. And perhaps most importantly, we will vote. We will vote. We will vote. Because when we vote, we win. When we vote, we win. We've demonstrated that over and over again. And if your vote were not important, if you were not important, they wouldn't be trying so hard to take it away. If you were not so important, there wouldn't be such a thing as a SAVE Act to make it more difficult for you to make the ballot boxes. If your vote was not important, they wouldn't be trying to turn the clock back to make it more difficult to lessen the voices of minorities. If you weren't important, which demonstrates how powerful you are. But we got to get off the sofas. We got to leave our homes. We got to leave our comfortable places. And we got to vote. We got to vote. Listen, we have an imperfect party. We have an imperfect system. But right now, it's all we got. And we got to band together. and we got to fight together, and we've got to demonstrate that we're not going back. We're not going back. There will be no second coming of Jim Crow. There will be no second coming of Reconstruction. There will be no second coming of taking away the rights that we fought for, that we died for. But that only happens when we are informed, prepared, mobilized, and we vote. This is bigger than politics. This is just plainly put about preserving our democracy for the next generation. History will remember this moment. The question is, when democracy was tested, did we stand up or were we silent? I know Louisiana. I know our people. I know our history. I know the good, the bad, and the ugly. We got to acknowledge all parts of it, because a history that is ignored is a history that's doomed to be repeated. And unfortunately, we see far too much being repeated. And I believe when we stand together, we'll move this nation forward, we'll move this state forward, we'll move our world forward. Together, we will attempt to bring all this to the forefront tonight, to give you that roadmap and to demonstrate that we're together. We got to stay together. We got to vote. We got to fight. We got to do it. And we've got to make sure that in our effort to do this, we don't let anybody, to use a football analogy, draw us off sides. We can't let anybody draw us off sides. They would rather us go out and fight and scream and yell, in particular, they fight and scream against each other. Well, brothers and sisters, we've got to, whatever differences we might have, you got to put them aside. You got to put them aside. For whatever someone may have wronged you, said something that you disagree with, you didn't like, and they could have been patently wrong. Tonight, and for the foreseeable future, we got to let it go. There's too much at risk. There are too few of us in this space to fight against each other. We got to be unified. We got to be strong. And like we do in our families, you got an issue, deal with it at home, not in the public. Deal with it in the back room. Check who you got to check, but when the curtains go up, let's demonstrate that we are united, and we're going to win, because when we vote, ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to our mayor, who will come and give a welcome address.
Good evening, everyone. My job tonight is to welcome you, although I wish I were welcoming you under better circumstances. But I am so glad to see such a packed house, standing room only, so that you all can become informed, be engaged, and most importantly, find a way to take important action. So what I want to talk to you about tonight is really about the local, state, and federal implications of this recent Supreme Court decision. And let me just speak very plainly and honestly to everyone here. You know, I posted a video on social media on Saturday night, really kind of explaining what happened with Louisiana versus Calais and the implications happening, explaining some of the bills going through the legislature. And some of the comments that I received back on this social media post were, Helena, stay in your lane. Helena, this is not a local issue. Helena, go back to fixing the streets. Helena, no one wants to hear your ideas or your position on what's happening on this. All of these comments on social media. Well, let me tell you this. Diluting the power of New Orleans voters, in particular black voters in New Orleans, is absolutely a major local issue for the city of New Orleans and for the mayor of New Orleans. And I will absolutely stand up every time for this particular issue. You know, as we read through the implications that'll happen here locally and on the state level and on the federal level, it was also very clearly spelled out in the dissent of this opinion by Justice Elena Kagan. And in her dissent, what she said about this Supreme Court decision is that the consequences are likely to be far-reaching and grave. The states still marked by residential segregation and racially polarized voting, minority voters can now be cracked out of the electoral process. The decision here is about Louisiana's District 6, but so too is it about Louisiana's District 2, which we're here right here. And so too it is about the many other districts, particularly in the South, that in the last half century have been given minority citizens, and in particular African-American citizens, a meaningful political voice. After today, she says, those districts exist only in sufferance and probably not for long. If other states follow Louisiana's lead, the minority citizens residing there will no longer have an equal opportunity to elect candidates of their choice, and minority representation in government institutions will sharply decline. And let me tell you, she foretold that perfectly, because in Louisiana, immediately action started to happen. Action started to happen and 4 bills started to move forward. There's 4 bills. Senate Bill 407, which is by Senator Price. That one keeps 2 black majority districts. Then there's Senate Bill 130, which eliminates 1 black majority district, but it eliminates Congressional District 2. It essentially extends the Baton Rouge district and brings it into New Orleans. Then there's Senate Bill 121. That one keeps 1 black majority district, District 2, and then there's Senate Bill 116, and this is the most dangerous one. This eliminates any black majority district in Louisiana. Now, this is what's really important, because I want you to understand what happens right here at home. So for the area of where we would have representation for New Orleans, we would now share a representative with Lafourche, Terrebonne, St. Bernard, and Plaquemine. You hearing me? So, I want to also talk to you about why this is also happening across the country. It's not just happening here in Louisiana, it's happening in Tennessee, Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Missouri, and potentially South Carolina. Why is this happening right now, and why is this happening so quickly? Well, let me tell you why. In the House of Representatives right now, the United States House of Representatives, there is a 3-member margin between who holds control. Democrats have 215 seats. Republicans have 218 seats. Once again, a difference of 3, where in these upcoming elections, that power could very much be shifted. Although now, after these redistricting efforts that are occurring right now, the Democrats would have to gain more than 10 seats. So this is about overall control. And when I heard Cedric Richmond the other day, as he testified before the State House, State Senate Governmental Affairs Committee, he talked about how maybe his words wouldn't change any minds. But you know what? Maybe his words won't change any minds, but our actions, maybe we can change who's sitting in those seats. I want to give you some numbers, and listen to these numbers very carefully. Back when I served in the legislature, I was elected in 2010. In 2010, when I was in the legislature, I want to give you some numbers of what it looked like in the Senate and in the House. This is the State Senate and the State House. In the State Senate, in 2010, there were 17 Republicans and 22 Democrats. Democrats controlled the Senate. In 16 years, Republicans had flipped 11 seats. They now hold 28, and Democrats lost 11. They now hold 11. On the House side, in 2010, there were 50 Republicans, 52 Democrats, and 3 independents. In 16 years, Republicans gained 23 seats, Democrats lost 20. The House right now stands at 73 Republicans, 32 Democrats. So let me say this, here in the city of New Orleans, we have the ability to not just only impact seats that we can vote on, we can impact elections all across the state. And let me tell you this, we need to take a very close look at the state legislative seats, because if they flip one direction, they can flip another. And the resources to flip a state rep seat is a lot less than, let's say, flip a governor's seat. And we can do that one by one by one, but it takes strategy. And what I can tell you right now, what I promise, is to move forward with that kind of strategy, because we have to start gaining more seats and gaining more control. Look at what's happening to us because of who's controlling the legislature. It's not good for New Orleans, and so I'm going to be looking at all the legislators to see who's good for New Orleans and who's not, because if you're not, we need to come for you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Unless anybody get confused about where we are and what we're doing, this SCOTUS decision, and we'll have our council president to come and talk about the reality that while this appears to be about congressional seats, and certainly it appears to be about Louisiana, and certainly it is. Louisiana v. Calais, the scene of the crime. But the crime is throughout our whole country. The crime is throughout our local governments, city councils, state legislative seats, school board seats, congressional seats. Wherever there is a district, this ruling gives a green light. And here's what the green light does. On one hand, it says it's okay to have partisan gerrymandering. You can draw a line to protect your party. But on the other hand, it says, we're going to make it more difficult for you to argue against discrimination. You can't make this up. You can discriminate by party, but you can ignore the fact that people have been discriminated by race. You have to prove the magic words, intent. How do I prove intent? I can't prove what's in your heart. Framers of the Constitution understood that. Now, a little known fact, there's never been an African-American elected statewide in the state of Louisiana since Reconstruction. There was a man named John Willis Menard, in the very seat that I hold, 150 years ago, who won the election with 64% of the vote, to be the first African-American ever, not just in Louisiana, ever to serve in Congress. Went to Washington with hopes of starting his new job. A gentleman went to the well of the floor and he said, and I quote, "America's not ready for a Negro to serve in Congress." And summarily, they did not seat him. It was 150 years ago. Fast forward now to just a month ago. Calvin Duncan was elected, duly elected, and they refused to seat him. Go now and you watch, there's an attempt to diminish the value of the voices of black folk in our state, but not just in Louisiana, all over the country. So let me be clear. We want two maps. We want two African Americans. We want the demographics to show that people should have the right to choose who they want to in a district where they can succeed. Now, you can call it anything you want. You can call it Democrat. But you cannot come into the city of New Orleans or the city of Baton Rouge or any metropolis and crack it open and split it up and dilute the voices of the people who are together. That defies why we're here. And some know that very, very clearly. It's not by accident. It's not by accident. Project 2025 wasn't by accident. Project 2025 didn't start overnight. There's a concerted effort to silence the voices of dissent. Whether it's black, white, green, blue, whatever, we have to be united. And it's important that you understand our argument is to fight clearly for 2 seats where African Americans have the right to choose who they want. We represent 1/3. 1/3 is simple math. There's 6 members. That opportunity should exist. And you vote whoever you want, but the opportunity should exist. Cities should not be broken up, should not be having an opportunity where people are going to be diluted away from their right to speak. So next, I want to ask J.P. Morrell, who's the president of New Orleans City Council, to share the issues as I just mentioned and talk about, as the president of City Council, what does this mean for your body? What does this mean for other city councils throughout the state of Louisiana and throughout the country when it comes to how maps are drawn and the impacts it could have in jurisdictions that we don't control?
I want to be honest by starting with something that I think we all see when we look around this room today. It should do everyone's heart good to see this room packed. What the people who do these things to us hope is that you will be so angry and so disheartened that you will stay home. And the fact that you are here today with your community, figuring out ways to organize together to begin this fight is the first step to changing these horrific things that have been done to us. Now, I want to start by, when I was asked by Congressman Carter to talk about how this could affect us locally, I really don't think many people understand the nature of how state and local government work. I'll give you an example. Many of you may or may not be familiar with the Public Service Commission. For those of you who aren't, there is a statewide body that deals with utility regulation. New Orleans has won a hard-fought victory over many years to control our own utilities. Something that has been an issue for years is that has been a tremendous thorn in the side of massive utility companies that spend a tremendous amount of money at the state level controlling the Public Service Commission. Your city council, for example, cannot and will not receive donations from utility companies. If you look at the Public Service Commission donation lists, it's all utility companies. And I say that's important for two reasons. One, there are efforts every single year. There is an effort this year to give the Public Service Commission control of your power and your water. We have a Public Service Commissioner that represents us. We have one African American out of out of 5. And the challenge is that when you look at decisions like the one the Supreme Court just did, when you look at ill-thought ideas to give control of our utility regulation to both the Public Service Commission in the wake of what the Supreme Court just did, just like there could be no African American or Democratic congressional seats, every single statewide regional seat is under the same decision. They could draft a Public Service Commission where they carve New Orleans 5 different ways, and the fate of our utilities could be out of our hands. I want to remind people, because people often forget, when New Orleans did not have control over our own utility regulation, people say, well, what's the worst that can happen? Well, the reality is, when NOPSI collapsed, there was a moment when the Public Service Commission in 1983 had New Orleans. And many of you may recall there is a massive nuclear plant called Grand Gulf built in Alabama. What people forget is when the state had a Public Service Commission, they made New Orleans pay more for the plant than anyone else. When you take power away from us locally and you allow groups to not spread the cost of things in a way that's equitable, and let's be very clear, right now what we're facing is the epitome of not doing things equitably. All types of costs and responsibilities can be placed in a singular area by those in power to charge those they don't like. I'll give you another example. When Governor Edwards was there, the city of New Orleans voted unanimously to not give Folgers a tax break because they were not entitled to it. What you don't know is that after the city, following the rules, declined to give Folgers that tax break, the Board of Commerce and Industry went behind our back, regave them the tax break, and now we're facing potentially the state suing us to give them tax dollars back that they were never entitled to out of our coffers. The Board of Commerce and Industry, a board that deals with these massive tax breaks, is created and staffed by the governor and the legislature. So when you hear Mayor Moreno talking about how important these legislative seats are, it is beyond my understanding how we as a party let it get to this point. We have been reticent to fight in ways that are necessary to protect what we had, and now we have to fight from behind to regain what we have lost. And though many of us are very angry, we have a right to be, we cannot stay angry. We have to be organized. Though many of you right now feel that things are hopeless, we cannot afford to be hopeless. We have to be hopeful, because what people want to happen in this moment is for you to feel so angry and so hopeless you do not vote. Do not let them do that to us. Last but not least, we focus a lot on the United States Supreme Court. We have a Louisiana Supreme Court. Currently, we have 2 black elected Supreme Court members representing Democratic areas. Reapportionment will be happening shortly. The legislature asks typically for the court to weigh in on what they think it should look like, but they're not required to do so. There's a real possibility that what you're seeing at the Supreme Court level will eventually play its way down here on every single level of government. So as the mayor said, as Congressman Carter said, it's not about right now. Obviously, you should play in our local elections, but the people that represent you locally are not the problem. What we're going to have to do as a city is disproportionately be organized to go throughout the state of Louisiana and campaign across the state to organize our neighbors to bring this battle into every single legislative, congressional, Supreme Court, appellate court seat. And that's really the task we all have to leave here today with. I mean, I will tell you, and it is beyond my understanding. We had a very difficult vote today that many of you may have followed, and I made a line there. I think it's important to say it here again. As we voted today on this item, this was the item regarding the election or not election, the special election over the new judicial seat. But as we were going through that very difficult debate and the possibility it would go to the Supreme Court, I was reminded of the plight of Homer Plessy. As many of you recall, Plessy versus Ferguson was the massive litigation that took place over 100 years ago where they challenged the doctrine of separate but equal. And the challenge there is that, and what I face today when we're doing that vote is, though we were in that historic moment, what I want to remind you is that when Plessy and the Citizen Committee brought that action before the Supreme Court, they thought they were going to win. They thought the law was so absolutely abundantly clear that well-meaning people, human beings, would rule in their favor. What is interesting is that we are over 100 years later, and we have less faith in this Supreme Court than the one from over 100 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, the thing I want you to take away from here tonight is that these fights are not removed from us. These battles over Congress are not just about wars or health care. All those things are very important. What they're also about is data centers. Control of your power and your water, where things go. It's control of how we are taxed and whether we're taxed fairly. There's nothing that prevents groups from putting tax burdens on the people they don't like and giving tax breaks to those that they do. Every election matters, and we need to be working together to figure out how to bring everyone together to make them understand these elections affect every aspect of your life. Thank you, Congressman Carter, for the opportunity to speak tonight.
A question that repeatedly comes up because we hear the discussion of the Voting Rights Act being eviscerated, being blown up, being rendered useless. That's correct. That part that's been eviscerated is that part that gives us an opportunity to fight back against discrimination. But believe it or not, people have asked this question, can we still vote? The answer is yes. You can still vote, and you can vote like your life depends on it, because it does. You didn't lose your right to vote, you lost your right to defend yourself against discrimination. And we're going to fix that by passing the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Act. You didn't lose your right to vote. In fact, I would argue that your right to vote has been enhanced like it's never been before. You got to vote like you've never voted before. You got to demonstrate like we did when David Duke was on the ballot. You got to demonstrate that we did when people were trying to take your rights away. You got to demonstrate when there's a presidential election. We got to vote every single election. Take advantage of the opportunity to vote early. Take advantage of the opportunity to bring 10 people with you, at least. Because when our numbers reflect the true demographics of our state, you'll realize Louisiana really isn't red. It's blue. Louisiana isn't really red. It's blue. It's been real fast moving. I'm going to ask Sidney Bartholomew, the newest member of the Senate, representing the Senate tonight, to come and give a quick overview of what happened on Friday, what's going to happen this week as they advance these bills. Sidney Bartholomew, newest member of the Louisiana State Senate.
Thank you, Congressman. So first, I want to start by just thanking everybody for coming out. It's really important. And if you were part of the group that assembled on Friday at the state capitol, thank you twice, because that show of force was so important and made so much noise that the halls of the Capitol are shaking right now. So thank you for being there. If you weren't there, just please continue to show up. Please continue to do this, and I hope this is the first of many more of these to come. So from the just kind of a procedural aspect of what's happening at the Senate, that Friday was simply a hearing. That was an opportunity to give the public a voice and the ability to make statements on primarily opposition to this bill. No one was there to support this. So the next step is going to be tomorrow. The committee will actually hear the bill and vote, which with objection, I'm certain, on whether or not to pass it through. So yes, it'll be 4 different bills. It'll be the 3 bills presented by Senator Jay Morris and 1 bill presented by Senator Ed Price. The Morris bills are the ones we have a serious problem with. I hope, and I've expressed this to my Republican colleagues, the few that I got an opportunity to talk to, that they make an effort to pass the Price bill through committee. That then puts it on the floor and gives us a fair opportunity to argue for that bill and potentially pass that bill, which would be a district that represents 2 majority-minority House seats. So that's what we're really fighting for. That will happen on tomorrow, committee, and then on Thursday, those bills will make it to the floor and be voted on, and then signed in by the governor as in finality. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. It goes back to the House, and then we'll come back for concurrence. What I want to implore is that we use this as a calling card to say we need to do more. Because any way you put it, we would not be here if Jeff Landry was not the governor. And so that's on us. And I'll give you like a perspective of a guy that's new to this, right? These faces in here are familiar. And while that's great, that's also part of our problem. This desire to play a role in this needs to go beyond this room. It needs to go beyond the people that keep showing up. And so we need to figure out a way, and trust me, it racks my brain. How do we engage more people? I want to point out that if it weren't for these black representatives in Congress, there are a lot of things that we would not have. Funding to HBCUs where we are here today. And that's what's missing. That's what my Republican colleagues don't understand. We have specific and unique needs to keep these sort of institutions going that you're not going to put any effort into. You will not help these institutions remain, so we need the type of leadership that will see the value in it and work toward it. And so, with that said, you would think every HBCU student 18 and up would make sure that they vote, right? That's something we need to make sure we're working on. I recently have a somewhat unique perspective because I'm around a lot of seasoned elected officials. Approximately 60% of my votes were cast, our election votes were cast by 60 plus voters. Thank you to the 60 plus voters, right? However, and I say this, if you're 18 to 25, I can almost get how many distractions are being thrown at you, and we really have to try to focus in on that. But if you're 35 to 50, 55, there's no excuse for you not to vote. Zero excuse. So I think that's who we hone in on. I think we also do with what Council President Morrell said, which was going to specific geographic areas where we feel like we can flip a seat and pour everything into that particular. We're going to have to identify which ones are flippable in the next election cycle and go after the most probable ones that we can win and take, and we go to those with a show of force and try to get those seats back. And we have to target, and I think a lot of people are coming to the table in terms of social media, in terms of programs to entice younger voters like Bike and Vote and the social media presence that really kind of coalesces young people to get really interested in this. But we have to hone in. I think if we're too broad, we're not going to capture anyone. I think that 35 to 50 that aren't voting is unacceptable, and that's who we need to really focus on. So I believe in everyone in this room because it's not going to be the folks on this stage that can do it. It's going to be everybody. It's going to take a collective effort, and I believe that everyone will go from here and try to build ideas around how do we do that. So it's not going to just be the 10 people that you pull in, but you need to pull those 10 in. We need to go beyond that and be pulling in 50 and 100 people. So let's figure that out collectively. I'm always open to talk about that and figure out what the best path forward is to get some energy in the younger group. So thanks for coming out. Keep coming out. And okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. And next we're going to hear from Alana Odoms with the ACLU, because the next step is to share with you the many questions. So what are you guys doing about it? What do you do when the governor makes an emergency declaration that suspends elections once they've already started? What do you do about the 40,000 ballots that have been mailed in from military people, our senior citizens who've already voted? It's the quintessential definition of irreparable harm. Because when a person who's serving our country at home and abroad, putting their lives on the line, they may not get another vote. And to suggest that, tough, let them vote again, as was said on 60 Minutes. No, man, what do you mean? It's still America. And we talk about our senior citizens who may go to glory. Every vote matters. Every vote matters. Every vote must be counted. And we're not just taking this on the cuff. When the Supreme Court came down, we started meeting. We anticipated, we knew this was going to be coming. We didn't anticipate to come this soon. Most of us suspect it came this soon because of what happened in Virginia. Because that was a retaliatory strike to counter what happened in Virginia. So, as it relates to the special order, as it relates to the maps, I'd like to have Alana Odoms to come up, who has been a stalwart, just a dynamic legal brain with no quit in her to continue pushing forward with all of the legal, smart arguments to defend our democracy. Thank you, Alana.
Thank you, Congressman Carter. It's so wonderful to be here with you all. Mayor Moreno, thank you so much for your wonderful comments, all our elected leaders. And to the community, thank you so much for showing up to say that you are invested in our future and your voices will not be silenced. Thank you. The Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, are the greatest expression of unfinished love in our law and in the Constitution of the United States. And I say that because the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, but as we know, that didn't do it alone. It took Juneteenth, it took getting the message beyond the Louisiana parishes that were not included in that first declaration from President Lincoln. But then you had the 14th Amendment, which was the largest redistribution of power from white power to formerly enslaved people and their descendants in this country. And what the 14th Amendment did is it said, we have the right to be citizens of this nation by birth. By birth. What it said is that our rights to be protected shall be equal to those of our white counterparts. That's equal protection. And it also said that we have due process, which means if the government tries to take something away from you, they have to give you notice. They have to give you an opportunity to be heard. They have to give you your fair day in court. But even more than that, that is procedural due process. The law also says something else. It says substantive due process. And you know what that means? There are some things that the law just can't take from you. You know why? Because the law didn't give it to you, and the law can't take it away. And that is what the 14th Amendment means. So when those Calais plaintiffs went up and they said that our maps violated the 14th Amendment, they were doing something sacrosanct. They were doing something so vile, so immoral, so ignoble. Because the 14th Amendment is about protecting the rights of the most historically marginalized, not about centering white grievance. White grievance is what we are talking about in these cases. And what we have to remember in the culmination of the Reconstruction Amendments of the 15th Amendment, it said that our vote cannot be diluted by race. Our vote cannot be diluted by race. And I'm going to tell you what the Calais case did and why it's so disgusting, frankly. And as we say in New Orleans, disgusting. It's disgusting. And that is because it took the 15th Amendment and the 14th Amendment and turned them on their heads. They said, why should we care about whether black people who fought and died and organized like we are here tonight in constitutional conventions to talk about the need for freedom and liberation, why center those people when we can center white people who feel aggrieved because they are losing the majority of the population in this nation and they want to hold on to whatever they can get? Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said in the oral arguments on October 15th, 2025, my mother's 75th birthday, I'll never forget it. She said that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act should not have a sunset because we should never allow a remedy to end when we know that the discrimination that perpetuates it still exists. She gave such a rousing example, and she used disability as a way to explain it, and I love that because we can all understand disability. The Americans with Disabilities Act said, we're not going to question whether an institution had in their mind that they wanted to keep people with disabilities out. We don't care whether they had it in their hearts that they didn't care about people with a disability. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the structure. We're going to say, do you have a ramp? We're going to say, do you have an elevator? And if you don't, you need one. We don't care about what's in your heart, and we don't care about what's in your mind, because intentional discrimination is not what we're looking for. We're looking at the effects. That's the same thing Section 2 did. It's an effects test, or at least it was before they gutted it. We don't care if Jeff Landry articulates on the record that he doesn't want black people to have political power in this state. We look at the effects. We look at what he gave Senator Morris to file. Bills to take away our civil district court judges, black seats. Bills to take away our appellate court judges, black seats. Bills to take away the clerk of court, Calvin Duncan. I don't care what's in your mind, but I care what the effects are. James Baldwin said it as well. He said, I don't need to know about whether white Christian nationalists don't like me, but I know that the institutions that perpetuate inequality in our communities and give our children books that are not equivalent to those of other students, that don't allow us equal jobs and equal access. So you all understand what I'm saying. I'm not going to belabor it. We need to look at effects. We need to look at effects. And so what we did when we found out about what happened in Calais, they took our effects test and they threw it out the window. And they said, you meet this intentional discrimination standard. No one can meet that standard. They were greenlighting what they did. They were greenlighting what they did in Memphis. They took Memphis, the only black district in Tennessee, and they broke it up into 3 parishes, 3 different districts. But I can tell you what, I have on good advice that there will be a black candidate who will run in those new districts, and we don't need 51%. You know why, New Orleans, we don't need 51%? Because in a place like New Orleans, we don't have racially polarized voting like they have in the rest of the state. So let's teach them what it looks like when we walk hand in hand together, black and white and Vietnamese and Asian and all together, coming together for what we know we need to do. We don't need 51%. What we need is in this room and beyond this room and in your communities and your neighborhood and your homes and your children. That is what we need. And so I'll close by saying this, a little bit of history. In 1866, Louisiana, black delegates and white delegates, 49 African American men and 49 white men came together, and we created the most progressive Constitution in American history. That's what it means to be great. Let me tell you what that Constitution did. It integrated our schools 120 years or so before Brown versus Board of Education. It gave black men the right to vote 2 years before the 14th Amendment was ratified. That's Louisiana strong. That's what multiracial democracy looks like. It gave women who were married property rights, and I know that doesn't sound very dramatic and very radical, but it was then. It chartered Southern University. That's what we did. And so when we get power, we don't do to other people what they did to us. They had the ability in that Constitutional Convention to have vengeful hearts. Notice what I said at the beginning, the Reconstruction Amendments are about love. They're about inclusivity. They're about compassion. They're about multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy. And we have that power. And Louisiana, we are the ones that will teach the nation. Don't forget it.
Now, right about now, if we were in church, somebody would say, can we say amen? Now, you see that level of passion, that level of fire? We got to make it contagious. We got to take it out of here, and we got to spread it to everybody. Because I know tonight we're preaching to the choir. But guess what? Sometimes even the choir needs rehearsal. So now we're going to hear from our district attorney, Jason Williams, who will come and just add. It was either you or me.
The same thing, boy. Whoever's got to follow that.
To add a big shoes to follow, I don't think he can put those pumps on. But to add a legal perspective is a great legal mind in our community who steps up, stands out. Jason, share with us your brief perspective.
I want to thank the fourth person to serve in Congress, fourth African-American person to serve in Congress after Reconstruction. Only four. That was quite an optic for the world to see that those four men were so close in age that only happened in my adult life. It really made the point that it was necessary. You know, I brought my mother with me tonight, and she's I'm not gonna say your age, but she's in the moonlight of a beautiful life, and you know, she grew up in Bogalusa, Louisiana. And Bogalusa, Louisiana was a hotbed of Klan activity in her childhood. And she had two uncles, Moses Watterson and Ray Watterson, who were members of something called the Deacons of Defense. And these were farmers, people wearing overalls, didn't have much less than maybe a pickaxe or a shotgun. And they got together to help people who came to fight for the vote, to protect them because they started coming up missing when they came to Bogalusa. And I raise that point to say that it takes ordinary people to do extraordinary things in very difficult times. There are a few people on this stage, but the people in these chairs and the people standing in this crowd and the children running out in this hallway where there wasn't childcare, these are the people that are going to stand in the face of what Donald Trump is trying to do. We haven't said that name today, but this is not serendipity. This is not an accident. This is a plan. This is a plan that I'm sad to say Democrats were not quite ready for. Salman Rushdie eloquently said that, how did he put it? He said, Democrats over the last election cycles haven't known the difference between a flawed friend and a mortal enemy. Democrats haven't known the difference between a flawed friend and a mortal enemy. And we have, democracy has. Human mankind has a mortal enemy in this country. We are close to celebrating 250 years, but it's not promised that this union holds together based upon what we are seeing now. And so we need to be strategic. We need to work together to make sure that every election cycle going forward, we have a plan and it is coordinated to make sure that we don't lose the little bit that we have been able to attain in this American promise that was written by a bunch of white male property owners that didn't even live up to it when they wrote it. What's at stake? Everything's at stake. We knew when he was picking Supreme Court justices that Roe was on the table. And now we're living in that. We knew that this redistricting fight was on the table. And now we're living in that because he's packed the court with people who are voting as Project 25 planned for them to vote. So this is not happenstance. This is not serendipity. It's going to take a lot of strategic, coordinated work, much like what existed many years ago. Much like we're out of practice with that. Barack Obama, somebody asked him a question about standing up and protesting. You know, I had a very nice growing up compared to some other folks' growing up. We could protest and nobody would hit you in the head with anything. We protest and the police walk us through and they walk us back. But now your job might be on the line. Now your physical health might be on the line. Now your life might be on the line. We have allowed ourselves to be slow walked back into a very dark time period. It's not that far ago, Congressman. And I have to say that young Senator Carter really got it right when I was watching that 8-hour hearing that happened at our Capitol when he asked Senator Morris about his body of work. A body of work that was stripping judgeships from New Orleans. A body of work that was stripping an elected office that a man had attained who got a higher percentage of the vote than Jeff Landry got to become governor. And now this. You want to take two men who have served this state well and wipe it away. So when you look at that body of work, like Ms. Odom says, it doesn't matter what was in his heart, that body of work is a racist body of work. And we have to be very clear about our next steps. And these next steps need to be organized, and they need to be based in the law, and we need to know who's on our side, and we need to know who's not. And I mean that. Because the city, the state that I can deliver to my son, and the city that Michael and Marlena can deliver to Kai, it's all on the line. Because when you don't have representation, you get an interstate built through your community. When you don't have representation, the paper mill in Bogalusa can cause all the fish to die and float up in a matter of a day. When you don't have representation, your children and your children's children can have cancer from the power plant they put in your neighborhood. So you see, representation is life or death. And we have to vote like it. We have to get young people registered to vote. We have to get older people who have checked out registered to vote. Because we actually have the numbers to make the difference if everybody votes. But we have yet to achieve that. But if there ever was a time, that time is now.
I'd like to acknowledge our Vice President of New Orleans City Council has joined us, Matthew Willard. Representative Kyle Green is with us also, Judge Simone Levine, and State Representative Sean Mina. Have I missed any other elected officials who may have come in? I mentioned Amy earlier, yes. I mentioned the other members of the City Council as well, Leslie, but all of our members of the City Council, please stand. All of our state legislators who braved the bad weather to get here, please stand. So earlier when State Senator Sidney Bartholomew said, and then was re-said again by our illustrious DA, that elections have consequences, votes have consequences. And when we talk about these two African Americans who currently serve, let me tell you what we fought against. We fought against that big, ugly law that threatens to rip 17 million people's Medicaid away from them. That's what happens when someone's at the table fighting for you. That's a human issue. When we talk about our education department with the orange man who wants to eliminate Department of Education, who wants to take away funding for HBCUs, who want to make it next to impossible to be able to borrow money to get a graduate degree or to go to medical school, to go to law school, Parent Plus loans, Pell Grants. taken away to block every pathway to the middle class. When you start cutting federal jobs and you cut them and you start seeing your neighbor, your friends, your relatives losing their jobs, that is Project 2025. When we look at an environment that is so desperately needed for an EPA, Environment Protection Agency, and it's doing anything but protecting the environment, cutting those grants that we fought for in the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that we passed, that put more money into environmental justice reparation than ever before, being cut right before us. And if we're not at that table, if we're not in that room, if we're not fighting, it's silent. It's silent. That's why we're here tonight, because that's what's at stake. The silence of things happening in the dark. These committee meetings that we had that lasted 27, 28 hours around the clock, Energy and Commerce, for which I serve, 27 hours around the clock fighting that big ugly law. 500 amendments trying to slow it down. See, we may not always have the vote, but we always have our voice. We've got to use that voice. We've got to use that voice. And now I'm going to speak your voice. I've got a number of questions here that came from the audience, but please don't leave, because I'm going to have Jared Evans with the Power Coalition, who's been an incredible partner with us throughout the state. An incredible partner with us to activate, to educate, to talk about next steps. What can we do? One thing we know we're not going to do, we ain't going to quit. We're not going to run. We're not going to back down. We're going to organize. We're going to vote. Jared's going to tell us a little bit about that in a minute. Let me just do the questions first, because I want you to end with that call to order, call to action. So Trey Brooks asked the question, if Louisiana says black population numbers are too small to justify a fair representation, what independent audits have been done to verify the accuracy of the census and the demographic systems being used to draw these maps? Zero. Because it is inconsistent with the facts. We're not too small. African Americans represent roughly 1/3 of the state. That is done every 10 years when we have reapportionment. What's different now is we're doing mid-term reapportionment. And why is that happening? Because President Trump picked up the phone and he called the governor of Texas and he said, I need 5 votes. I need 5 votes because I don't want the process to be fair. Because I don't want Hakeem Jeffries to be Speaker of the House. Because I don't want Democrats to show how bad I've been ripping them off. So what do when you can't play by the rules? You cheat and you change them. And what we see happening across the country is a changing of the rules because you can't win playing fair. 2024 government accountability. Oh, no, we're not going to do that, brother. I'm going to answer your question. I am. I'm going to the second. I'm going to the second part of the question right now. I got you. That's right. I got you. Listen, I am not. If you wrote a question, unless it's a duplicative, I'm going to read it all. Second part of the question, 2024 Government Accountability Office report reviewing Census Bureau failed and said it had not implemented the regulations. I am one of the few innovators here in the South Louisiana. I have a solution. Brother, not tonight, not in this forum. We want to hear your solution. We just can't do it tonight, but I promise you, my team's going to come get your name and number right now. I look forward to visiting with you. Because I will tell you this. Our job is not just to talk to you, it's to listen to you. That's right. Our job is to listen to you because this is, in fact, a partnership. A partnership. Government works best when it listens to the people it serves. And that's why we're here. So, young brother, I appreciate you. Thank you. I was reading it all. Heather Morse. I'm very concerned about the U.S. Postal Service and delivery of mail, especially mail-in ballots. What are you doing to ensure the mail ballots will get delivered? Everything we can, given that the White House controls the U.S. Postal Service. everything we can, and you often hear me talk about the 3 C's. The Congress, we will use every power, every tool, every mechanism, and every ability to work within the confines and use procedures to beat them when we don't have the vote. Then the second is to go to court when we think they're doing wrong. We've been very successful in court, except for the times when Trump has put his thumb on the scale and had judges rule in ways that even they realize is wrong. Then the third is what we're doing tonight, community. Community being a part of not only this discussion, but every discussion. And then if each of you leave here and go to your sororities, your fraternities, your churches, your family, and regurgitate, repeat everything that we said today and get everyone fired up, we can deal with things like what's going to happen with mail-in ballots. Well, heck, we had mail-in ballots and I didn't go count them. People did, in fact, mail in. They're not counting. We're holding them accountable. We have what, in Congress, one of our most significant tools is oversight. But that only works as well as the checks and balance systems that force them to do it. Trump brags that he is the president, the Speaker of the House, he controls both chambers and the Supreme Court. That's a failed democracy. And we've got to get sick and tired of being sick and tired and change it. How do we change it? By voting. Deidre Meredith. The people of New Orleans participated in a free and fair election, but after the election was done, after the election was certified by the Secretary of State, the rules changed, the structure changed, the election was essentially diminished. New Orleans voters' voting rights and the power of our voting essentially no longer has power unless our elected officials stand up to protect their vote. Will the city attorney file on our behalf? Will the people of Orleans Parish v. State of Louisiana right now please file with urgency? JP? I think you want, well, this is on essentially the Calvin Duncan being elected and then being stripped away and not being seated. Will the city file suit against that? And I think the council has done actions on that today. You want to? Well, your vote is what we're here tonight about. The dilution of our vote is what we're fighting against in Baton Rouge right now. The dilution of our vote, but here's the greater issue. Making sure that your vote, once cast, means something. See, it's one thing for us to fight against them diluting it. It's another thing to having your vote negated. That's what happened with Calvin Duncan. Your vote was erased. That's what happened with the election that's going on now where people started early voting. Regardless of who you were voting for, those votes should count. But they didn't. And so then we have to continue to fight, to file lawsuits, as has been done, as Ms. Odom shared with you. There were a ton of lawsuits. Unfortunately, the courts, they're not on our side.
Well, Councilman Carter, I mean, the issue is, and certainly what the city can do and will do, we'll talk to the city attorney, is file in front of the court briefs on the existing suit. When you already have a suit in play, filing more duplicative suits doesn't give you more bullets in the chamber, but the council will get, with the city attorney and the mayor, more actively involved in supporting all of the existing lawsuits. We can do that, and we will do that.
And that's happening. Alana, you want to? Yeah, I think you need it, Alana. Alana, use it. Turn it on.
Hello. Okay,
There it
good,
is.
good,
There we
good,
are.
good. So in the case of Calvin Duncan, we filed a case representing Calvin in his individual capacity and also as a voter in New Orleans, and alleged several things. One, a First Amendment retaliation claim because we believe that the governor and the attorney general target him specifically for his claims of being an exonerated person. We saw for many years he's been fighting against this in his campaign, but also in his effort to get his right and just compensation for being wrongly incarcerated, all of those things. We also established or brought a 14th Amendment equal protection claim. We succeeded at the federal court level. There was a 49-page opinion, and importantly, we argued that when the legislature passed Senate Bill 256, they created a new position. they could not simply consolidate the clerk of civil district court and the clerk of criminal district court into a super clerk position and then appoint someone through their own means. And so the judge actually agreed with us. He said, you created a new vacancy, it's ipso facto vacant, and it cannot be filled by appointment. That the city council potentially would call for a special election at the right time, and that would be an election. And so we got that 49-page opinion. It came down at around 8:30 or 9 p.m. on May 3rd. Calvin Duncan was supposed to take office 12 o'clock on May 4th, 12 a.m. We believe that based upon the Louisiana Constitution, that his right vested in that office at 12 o'clock. And we believe also by virtue of the Constitution that his term cannot be diminished. Unfortunately, the Attorney General ran to the United States Fifth Circuit, which is the most conservative circuit in the nation. They filed their brief at 11:30 at night on May 3rd, and they asked for the U.S. Fifth Circuit to issue a stay of the case. They asked for what's called an administrative stay and a regular stay of the case. As a matter of course, the U.S. Fifth Circuit always grants an administrative stay. And so at 10 o'clock the next morning, they granted that administrative stay. We told Calvin to go to work on May 4th at 8 o'clock in the morning because we had heard from no other judge other than Judge DeGravels and his 49-page opinion saying that Calvin had the right to continue and serve as clerk of court because they illegally eliminated his position, and that SB 256, that vehicle that did it, was unconstitutional. Unfortunately, when the stay came down, because Calvin is a man of great dignity, and we had no idea what this governor would do to enforce that stay, we had no idea whether they would use state police, we had no idea what would happen, he left the building, not because he didn't believe he has a rightful place to be there, but because we don't know what the state would do to enforce this. I want you to understand something very clearly. We do not believe, and we know for a fact, that there's been no ruling on the merits in our case. The stay is merely administrative. Now, do we think that the Fifth Circuit is playing games? We do, because we should have gotten a briefing schedule already, and we haven't. And I don't know the reason for that. But we do believe, and I'm holding out a lot of hope, because that 49-page decision was very well reasoned, that they could deny the state's mandamus. And the mandamus essentially said, a mandamus is an action where, it's a ministerial action where they're asking essentially the court to throw out Judge DeGravels' opinion. They're asking for something called vacatur, to throw out his opinion. We believe that we still have a chance that they will not do that. And if they don't, what will happen next is that the city council will call for the special election. They did some procedures today. There is an interim appointed, but they will call for a special election, and Calvin Duncan will have the right to run a campaign for the super clerk. I'm sorry, dear, what did you say?
No. That's not. Next question.
Wait, before you get to that, I want to emphasize one thing to add to Alana's point, and that's for the timing. The challenge we had as a council today is that the state law that allows for us to call an election has a 20-day time limit. And the concern that members had today is that if the Fifth Circuit continued to play games and it went beyond that 20 days, by law, the person that makes the appointment and calls the election would be Governor Jeff Landry. So the council did the action today. We don't know if they will prevail at the Fifth Circuit, but to preserve the right that if they are successful, that the policies were done timely to allow us to have the opportunity.
Thank you. Manisha James, when are we going to protest? When are we going to stop talking and start acting? And she goes on to say, I'm ready to fight. And she further says, and I'm very serious. Manisha, we appreciate you. But I suggest that we fight smart. That we don't fight with violence, that we fight with our brains. That we do it with our feet, with our hands, with our brains, not violently. They want us to do it violently. We have to demonstrate we will not do it violently. We will be consistent, we will be firm, we'll be fact-based, and we will not turn around. Byron Cole asked, why isn't the Democratic Party supporting Mr. Gary Crockett's lawsuit when it's the only legal action that has any significance regarding voting rights. I can't speak for the Democratic Party. No one is here for them, not familiar with the lawsuit nor what actions the Democratic Party has taken, but thank you for your question. Domingo Martinez, why is the Republican Party well, but I need you to fill out a card. I'm not gonna. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. I thought it was covered. Yes, go.
Okay, so I don't know about the Democratic Party's position. I don't represent the Democratic Party, but I do know about Mr. Crockett's suit and his preliminary injunction to declare SB 256 unconstitutional. He got that preliminary injunction at the 19th JDC. He won. AG Muriel took that up to the Louisiana Supreme Court, and they granted a stay. Exactly, and so, yes, it's demonstrated viability, just like what I said about the case with Calvin Duncan. Importantly, though, the Chief Justice dissented, and so did Justice Guidry, and they pointed out something I think really important, which is that every single day, pro se plaintiffs are denied from going and jumping over the appellate court to try to get to the Supreme Court. And the Chief Justice found that that is what AG Muriel was doing, and so did Justice Guidry. And so there are people on the Supreme Court who recognize the kind of games that are being played. But once again, now that I can kind of see how this works, what we should have done in Mr. Duncan's case was that we should have moved immediately to go to the United States Supreme Court to have them issue an administrative stay of the Fifth Circuit Court stay. But again, we're learning this honestly in real time, just like everyone else. If we had to do it again, that's what we would do, because that timeline would essentially allow the status quo to remain in place, and then Calvin Duncan would have gone into office, and we would have had to, this is going to be a fight that goes on for a long time. So the bottom line is, yes, it was a viable suit. It was successful, and now it stayed at the Louisiana Supreme Court. We think it will probably go back down to the 19th JDC, and then we'll have to go to the First Circuit, I believe, and then back to the Supreme Court.
Thank you. Listen, it is now 8:25. I promised I'm going to try and get you out, but I don't want to leave any questions unanswered. So I'm going to ask if we can give quick answers, everybody, to make sure that we get everyone, as I committed, everyone who had a question, with the exception of ones that have been duplicated, then to have Jared come up and talk about our next action. Domingo Martinez asked, why is it that the I'm going to ask, I know, but we cannot start doing, if you fill out a card, I'll be glad to let you say something, but I understand, Gary, I know who you are, and I'm going to let you speak, but Gary, I do, but I also want to run this with some regulation. Everybody would like to stand up and talk, and if I let you, I got to let everybody. So we have to have some rules of decorum, brother. That's all I'm asking. Please respect that. Everybody sat here all this time. Let's. Why is it that the Republican Party feels the need to redistrict moments before an election, undermining our democracy in the middle of, against the will of the people? If they were not afraid of our ability to vote, is it the plan to ensure active democratic reform and election policy ensure secure and fair elections? Why do you feel the Republican Party white first gerrymandering is passed almost immediately while Democrat gerrymandering gets blocked? Because he who has the goal makes the rules. And that's what they're doing. They're taking advantage of the system, and they're throwing rules, regulations, the rule of law to the wind. They're demonstrating that they can bend and twist the rules to make it fit what works for them. And to hell with your rights to vote. To hell with what you've done. Their democracy and our democracy looks very different. We've got to get back to a democracy that looks like a democracy that's representative of every person in this room, where everybody has a voice. Everybody can have free speech. Everyone can vote for the people that they choose, and not some twisted midterm gerrymandering for partisan gain while ignoring the rights to be defended against discrimination. Jane Bronner, what is what is one thing that each and every person in this room tonight can take back to their community to make it a difference, and what impact, and what's the call of action? We're going to have the call of action in just a few minutes, but one thing that we can take away with this, vote, vote, organize. Outside the door, as Power Coalition has a table set up for people who are not registered. If you haven't registered to vote, take a few moments as you leave. Sign up, register to vote, get people to register to vote. Let this be a clarion call for the pain that we're feeling for what they're trying to do to us. The antidote to that is to vote. The antidote to that is to vote. The antidote for us as members of Congress is to pass the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Act, because that will undermine what happened with the Supreme Court. Because we will present to them a 2026 version of the Voting Rights Act that is bulletproof, that the Supreme Court can't undo, that will not take away your rights, that will not have us to come beg every 10 years to have our voting rights restored. It will be sacrosanct. It will be in law. We've got to do that, but we can't do that until we have majority of both chambers. George Krauser. I understand the Congress voted to ban members from placing bets on Polymarket, and what steps can be taken to stop administration from doing so? Everything that we've talked about. The president boasts that he is the president. He controls the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court. The only way to change that is to take those powers away. The only way to change that is to take those powers away and to restore our checks and balances so each government, separate but co-equal, will have a check. When one gets out of control, one or both of the others should check it. Looks like Jean Gellin. How to engage ourselves to help our Haitian community to make the right choice at the upcoming elections. Vote for people who fight for you. Very simple. Vote for people who fight for you. Vote for people who stand up for you, not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard. Don't ask people that what you're going to do, ask them to show you what you've done. Because the things that you're saying you want to do when you're elected, you should have a roadmap of what you've already done. Because your leadership does not have to start once you're elected. Your leadership starts long before you take the oath of office. So when a person says what they're going to do, tell me what you've done. And then you can have my vote. Vote. Ron Ely. Blacks represent 1/3 of Louisiana population, which reflect the 2 seats currently represented by them. If those seats are eliminated, there will be no representation. Where's the legislation restrict the state's ability to tax those that feel they shouldn't have equal representation? Vote. Again, the solution, I don't want to oversimplify it, but it all lies within our ability to vote. We can talk about all the great stuff, but in this representative form of government, if we don't have the votes to control those chambers, they won't get done. But guess what? Here's the good part. When we vote, we can get control of those chambers. Linda Harris, did the committee bring voter registration information and pamphlets tonight? Yes, they're right out front the door. I did not see any at the sign-in table. They're out there now. If they weren't when you came in, Power Coalition have people out that are taking applications to register to vote. And that is it for all the questions that we have. Brother, you want to just talk real quickly about your lawsuit, real briefly? Quickly, if you don't mind. Is it?
Okay, so it was submitted to the United States Supreme Court on today, and so we expect an emergency ruling soon, I hope.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Gary Crockett. We filed on behalf of both Calvin Duncan and each of you that are here to make sure that the rights were protected.
Thank you, brother. Christine Jordan wants to know, are there any peaceful protests organized for May 16th? The Power Coalition will talk about that in a few moments. Nate Bryant, It has become abundantly clear that now more than ever we need to organize across the state. What are the efforts that have been made so far? They divide between North and South Louisiana. There's no longer exists during times like this, especially with so many black people across the state. Organize and vote. We'll talk about that in a second in closing. Lois Gould says not only our representation has been affected, it also relates to taxation without representation. Therefore, we don't pay our taxes. That will affect their pockets. So why not consider not paying taxes since they don't want? I wouldn't recommend that. Only because I don't want Donald Trump to show up at your door and start trying to seize your property and your assets. We'll find some other ways to do it that doesn't put you in harm's way. Mark Champagne Barnes, I believe the country is headed toward a civil war. Do Republicans realize what they're facing? Yeah, they do. But I don't think they have the full effect of what it is because Donald Trump is selling them a lot of trash. He's sending our children to war, but he's not sending his own. And so what he's doing, even to Republicans, I think they're starting to realize across the country, not nearly as fast, not nearly as many, but there's buyer's remorse because they see gas prices don't just affect Democrats. Our failed economy doesn't just affect Democrats. The price of groceries that was supposed to go down never did. He said there was going to be no wars. He started 3. So here's the reality. Saying one thing, doing another, and then committing what is a systematic mass confusion to distract you from Epstein files, to distract you from the war in Iran, to distract you from an economy that's failing, to distract you from the prices of gas that are going up, to distract you as you pilfer the country for personal gain. This has never happened in our country before. That's why they've criticized the word woke. Because woke means to not be asleep. The opposite of woke is to be asleep. Brothers and sisters, we can never go to sleep. They can call it whatever they want. We will stay awake. We will not be asleep. Janet. I don't know. Somebody got to help with that one. Levante Lucas. How are we incentivizing young people to get involved to vote? To demonstrate that we're listening to you. Our young people need to know there's a place at the table for you, not just to sit, but to talk and for us to listen. The incentive is you are as much a part of our society as anybody else. Your voice matters. For every young person that's out there, I want you to know we're listening and we have place for you and we want you to be a part of the process. We know that you have a powerful perspective and we want you to be a part of it. What strategies are being used to engage the next generation of young leaders? How are we passing the torch? We're working through organizations like Dillard University, Xavier University, Power Coalition, past all of the various organizations, CBCI Boot Camp, CBC Foundation, scholarships and fellowships that we create to get young people to come to Washington, be a part of the program, learn how government works, and oh, by the way, be paid for it while you do it. Tamika D. Congressman Carter, I watched 60 Minutes last night, and the governor tried to play the people's face by quoting our late, great Dr. Martin Luther King. He spoke that Dr. King's speech mentioned a time when we would one day judge a person by the character of the skin, by the content of their character, not by the color of the skin. My question is, how's the governor quoting this but following the character of a president and alleged pedophile? I don't know if an answer is needed after that, because that says it all. To sit and say that race is not a factor in our country anymore because we've had a black president. To say that people's vote's no big deal, just vote again. I mean, it's kind of tone deaf, right? Because it suggests that our votes don't matter. It suggests that because we've had a black president that somehow race issues don't exist in America. I'm not sure what world anyone's living in if they think that. We are not in a race-neutral society. Full stop, period. Racism is alive and well in America. And in many cases, it's more healthy now than it's ever been. But it's only going to end when good people like you, black, white, of all ages, Hispanic, Asian, of every background, puts our hand on that moral arc and bend it toward justice. Now, I'm going to say one thing, and then we're going to have Jared come up, Jared Evans with Power Coalition, to talk about. That's it. We're not going to take any more questions at this point. That we're going to ask that Mr. Evans come forward, but I'm going to leave you with this. A young Dr. Ben Franklin, a young Dr. Ben Franklin, when coming out of the Constitution in Philadelphia, was asked by someone, Dr. Franklin, what kind of government do we have? Do we have a monarch or do we have a republic? He said, and I quote, a republic if we can keep it. A republic if we can keep it. Here we are in 2026 still struggling to keep that republic, where every person has a right to vote, where every person has a voice. The framers of the Constitution knew this day might come, knew the challenges that this democracy would face with people who want to bend it to their own use. That's why we have a Constitution. That's why we have a rule of law. And that's why we're here tonight, to fight, to protect it. We may disagree, it's okay. We may have different ideas, it's okay. We may have different philosophies, ideological points of view, it's okay. But what's not okay is that our rules of engagement should never be used against us. That our Constitution should never be ignored, a document that was not perfect when written and arguably not perfect now, but has been made perfect through multiple amendments. We ain't going back. We ain't going back. We're not going back. We're not going back. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so profusely for being here. I thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your passion. Together, we're going to win this if we don't get weary. Rest if you must, but don't you quit. Jared Evans. Jared is one of our outstanding partners in justice who've been organizing and working with Power Coalition, has done a fantastic job. He's going to send us out of here with some marching orders, some actions. What do we do next? Sign those opportunities to get registered to vote and listen to this great dynamic leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman, and most importantly, thank you for not making me have to follow Alana. Yeah. It is so great to be back in my favorite city in the entire world. So I'm going to start going over what our plan of action is. I ask everybody to either take out something to write with or their phones to take notes. I have some bill numbers to give you. So as I go over that, I first want to start with what happened on Friday. And all due respect to Senator Bartholomew, he talked about it, but he talked about it in very politically correct terms and in very Christian-like terms. I'm a country boy from North Louisiana, so I'm going to kind of talk about it a little differently. Just straight up, y'all, we scared the shit out of them on Friday. Republicans in Louisiana are not used to being called racist for their racism. And when we kept them there for 8 hours, they could not believe it. They could not believe that we had buses from New Orleans, from Monroe, from Shreveport, and we packed not only that committee room. First of all, Congressman, there was nothing else going on Friday. The legislature had no other legislative business, and they had 5 or 6 other committee rooms they could have put us in, and they picked the smallest one, a room that could barely fit 30 people. And in response to that, we packed 3 overflow rooms, and you could barely even get through the hallway. So, in response to the beautiful mosaic that they saw on Friday, and honestly, what scared them the most was the white people. They really, really were not used to having white people that looked like them, look them in the face and say, your actions do not expose the Christian values that you uphold yourself to. That's what scared them the most. So when we left committee on Friday, they told us that the final vote in the Senate committee would happen on Wednesday. On the way down here today, we found out that it's now going to be tomorrow. And not only that, instead of giving us a definitive time to organize around, instead of telling us that committee is going to start at 5 or 6, they simply just said upon adjournment of the Senate. So we don't know. The Senate goes in at 2:30 tomorrow, 2 o'clock tomorrow. So it could be at any time tomorrow afternoon. So here's what our call of action is. First, if you are at a town hall on redistricting and voting rights on a dreary Monday evening, I'm going to assume, I think it's safe to assume, that everyone here is registered to vote and either has voted or plans to vote on Saturday. But I came all the way from Natchitoches Parish to tell y'all tonight that just voting is no longer enough. You've heard from everyone up here what is at stake for your beautiful city, for Orleans Parish, for our communities. Voting is no longer enough. You have to reach out to everyone in your household, everyone in your network, your church members, your fraternity brothers, your sorority sisters, members of your book clubs, your friends online. We have so much at stake. And so everyone must be responsible for their entire networks getting them to the polls. Second, please vote your entire ballot. There has been all kind of crazy chaos, and we have pending litigation, and Jazzy Jeff is doing his thing, trying to suspend this election and cancel this election. But please vote your entire ballot. We don't know what's ultimately going to happen. Our litigation might invalidate his actions towards the election, but please, when you go to vote on Saturday, please vote for your entire ballot. So tomorrow is all hands on deck. All 3 of the maps that take away minority voting power, that strip Orleans from its seat, our state's signature city, our state's most populous city, the economic engine of our state. All 3 of the maps that strip away voting power from this city will be heard in committee. But we don't know whether it's going to be a closed primary, whether it's going to be an open primary. We don't even know if we will be able to vote for our members of Congress until November. They don't know. If you didn't know, they're making it up as they go along. They honestly have no plan other than to dilute minority voting strength. So please, SB 49 is the bill that's going to be used, the tool, the instrument that's going to set the terms for the new election. Please call your member of the State House, the House of Representatives, and ask them to oppose SB 49. This is by Senator Alan Seabaugh, who, if you do not know, is the worst member, the most racist, the most bigoted member of the legislature. We are very, very nervous and scared, but we will be watching that bill. Things are moving really, really fast. Congressman, as I was sitting here, we just found out that Senator Carter has been removed from Senate and Governmental Affairs for the rest of this week, unfortunately. Things are moving really, really fast. And so to get the latest information, we will be live streaming and posting videos from the Capitol. Please follow the ACLU of Louisiana. That is ACLU_Louisiana, both on Facebook and Instagram. Please follow Power Coalition for the latest updates. Our Instagram is PowerCoej. And please follow the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, which is NAACP_LDF. All 3 of those accounts will keep you updated on when committees are scheduled, what agendas will be heard, what bills will be debated, and as things are moving very, very fast. Final passage will be a major day of action. Just as we had on Friday, buses coming from New Orleans and Shreveport and Lake Charles and every other corner of the state, we will have buses coming to the Capitol on whenever that day is. It's looking like it's going to be the week following Memorial Day. But if you follow us on social media, you can get those latest informations. I know it's tough to come to the Capitol during the week. That's why they schedule these meetings at crazy times. But we're going to do everything we can to make sure that those committee rooms are packed, that they hear us singing, that they hear us chanting. And all of this is building towards two things. You heard Alana talk about how the Supreme Court has now said that in order to bring any successful claim under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, you have to show intent. And so having everyone come to the Capitol and making their voices heard and speaking up in committee and telling them how intentional this is, that helps us build the record so that we can be successful again in protecting, as you heard, our minority seats. And secondly, what all this is building towards is January 2029. The civil rights community, led by the Power Coalition and ACLU and LDF, we have Project 2029. And it is in response to Project 2025. And simply put, that means that in January 2029, when Congressman Carter and his colleagues are in the majority, and we have a pro-voting rights president in the White House, their day one priority must be to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And so all of this is building that record to show why we need the Voting Rights Act. As in Justice Alito's majority opinion in the Calais decision said that racism is over. The conditions in the South have changed. We have to build the record to show that things have not changed. In fact, they've gotten worse. The tools are still the same. The tools have changed, but the goal is ultimately the same. We no longer have grandfather clauses. We no longer have poll taxes. We no longer have to guess how many jelly beans are in the jar. But the goal is still the same, and that is to dilute the voting strength of minority communities and make it as hard as possible and as unfair as possible for us to elect candidates of their choice, irrespective of their race. So again, that is SB 116 that we're opposed to, SB 121 that we are opposed to, SB 130, and the bill that's going to be heard to move the primaries, whether to close or open, is SB 49, and we are in support of SB 407. Again, please follow the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice on social media. Please follow the ACLU and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Stay tuned for final passage. We will have multiple buses, again, coming from New Orleans to the Capitol for final passage in the House. And please sign the recall petition. Thank you, Congress.
You all have been incredibly generous with your time. Our panelists have been incredibly generous with their time. Give them all a round of applause, please. Give yourselves a round of applause, because none of this matters if you're not here. None of this matters if you're not here. I cannot thank you enough, because an engaged community is a community that will not be snookered, that will not be taken back. God bless you. Thank you all. Drive safely. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, please share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. You can listen to past and future episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow on my official platforms at Rep. Troy Carter and subscribe to my newsletter at troycarter.house.gov. Thanks again, and laissez-les, bon temps roulé.